In 2023, a team of scientists pushed a fiber-optic camera through a tiny gap in the north face of the Great Pyramid of Giza into a space no human being had entered in 4,500 years. The screen flickered. For a moment there was nothing but grain and static, and then the corridor appeared. A long, narrow passage sloping upward into total darkness, its walls made of limestone blocks cut so precisely that the seams between them had survived for 45 centuries without shifting. A gabled ceiling of enormous stone beams leaned against each other overhead, holding back the crushing weight of 6 million tons of rock. The passage ran 9 meters into the heart of the pyramid, and then stopped at a wall. Behind that wall, the instrument said, was something else, something bigger, something the camera could not reach. And here is what nobody wants to say out loud. This corridor was not on any map. It was not in any ancient text. It was not mentioned by a single one of the archaeologists, engineers, tomb robbers, or explorers who spent the last 2,000 years crawling through this monument, convinced they had found everything there was to find. It was hidden, deliberately. Behind solid stone, above the only entrance, in the exact place where a builder would put a passage if he never wanted it discovered. And it is only one of the things hiding inside the Great Pyramid that the official story cannot explain. Because the same scanning technology that found this corridor also found something above it. A void. An enormous, empty, sealed space at least 30 meters long, buried deep in the core of the pyramid, that no one built a doorway to, no one wrote about, and no one has ever seen. A structure with a burial chamber that has never held a confirmed body. A stone coffin with no lid, no inscription, and no occupant. Blocks weighing as much as loaded aircraft lifted hundreds of feet into the air with a precision modern cranes struggle to match. And a mathematical fingerprint hidden in the dimensions of the building that keeps producing numbers our civilization did not discover until thousands of years later. This is the story of what is actually inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. And by the end of it, you'll understand why one engineer who spent his career studying the structure reportedly said that we have been telling ourselves a comfortable story about a tomb for 200 years, and that the building itself has been quietly telling us we are wrong. To understand why a single hidden corridor sent a shock through the entire field of Egyptology, you have to start with the scale of the thing it's hiding inside. The Great Pyramid is not just old. It is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it is the only one still standing. It was built around 2560 BC for the pharaoh Khufu, and for nearly 4,000 years, a span longer than the time between its construction and today, it was the tallest man-made structure on the planet. Nothing humans built came close until the cathedrals of medieval Europe, and those took generations of accumulated engineering to rival a building the Egyptians raised in roughly 20 years. The numbers are the part that stops people cold. The pyramid is made of an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. The average block weighs around 2.5 tons. Some of the granite beams inside weigh as much as 80. To finish in 20 years, the builders would have had to set a block into place, perfectly, roughly once every 2 to 3 minutes, for 20 years straight, without stopping. The base covers 13 acres and is leveled to within about 2 centimeters across its entire span, a tolerance that would challenge a construction crew working today with lasers. The 4 sides are aligned to true north, south, east, and west, with an error smaller than a fraction of a single degree. It is, by any honest measurement, one of the most precisely engineered objects ever created by human hands. And we built it before the invention of the wheel and axle cart in Egypt, before iron tools, before the pulley. That is the paradox at the center of everything that follows. This is a machine of staggering precision, and yet the official explanation for what it is could not be simpler. A tomb. A very large, very fancy grave for one king. That explanation has held for 2 centuries. And every single discovery we are about to walk through, the empty coffin, the bare chambers, the impossible engineering, and finally the hidden corridor and the void it points toward, makes that simple explanation harder and harder to believe. Let's start where everyone starts. The king's chamber. Deep inside the pyramid, more than 140 feet above the ground, and reached only by climbing the soaring Grand Gallery, there is a room. It is built entirely of red granite, not the soft local limestone that makes up most of the pyramid, but granite, quarried at Aswan and hauled more than 500 miles down the Nile. The chamber is a perfect rectangle, its dimensions locked to precise mathematical ratios. And above its flat ceiling, the builders stacked 5 separate compartments of granite beams, one on top of the other, some of those beams weighing 70 tons or more, apparently to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid pressing down from above. It is the single most reinforced room in the entire structure. Whatever this chamber was meant to hold, the builders wanted it protected for eternity. For centuries, this was the climax of the tour. The heart of the tomb, the final resting place of Pharaoh Khufu. This, we were told, is where the body was laid, surrounded by treasure, sealed forever. Except there was no body, and there was no treasure. And when you understand what was actually found in that heavily guarded, mathematically perfect granite room, the entire familiar story begins to come apart in your hands. Because sitting in the king's chamber, against the western wall, is a single object, a sarcophagus, a coffin carved from one solid block of granite, and it is empty. Not robbed empty. Not the treasures were taken, but the mummy remained empty. Completely, absolutely empty. No lid, no body, no inscription, no name. Not a fragment of a mummy, not a scrap of linen, not a single funerary object, nothing. Now, defenders of the standard story have an answer for this, and it's worth taking seriously. Tomb robbers, they say. The pyramid was plundered in antiquity, thousands of years ago, and the robbers took everything: the mummy, the gold, the lid of the coffin, all of it. Case closed. But here is where it gets strange, and here is the detail that the comfortable explanation quietly walks past. When the first documented explorers broke into the king's chamber, most famously the Caliph al-Mamun's men, who tunneled into the pyramid around the year 820 AD, they reported that the passages leading up to the chamber were still sealed. The great plug stones were still in place. The chamber, by several accounts, appeared undisturbed, and yet the sarcophagus was already empty. If the robbers came and went before the 9th century, they somehow resealed the pyramid perfectly behind them, replaced multi-ton plug stones from the inside, and left without leaving a trace of a break-in. Or the coffin was empty before it was ever sealed. Read that again. The coffin may have been empty before the pyramid was closed. And this is not the only empty coffin problem in Egyptian pyramids. It is a pattern. Pyramid after pyramid from this era, when finally opened, has yielded the same unsettling result. Magnificent structures, immense effort, granite sarcophagi, and no occupant. No confirmed royal body has ever been recovered from inside any of the Great Pyramids at Giza. Think about that. The most famous tombs in human history, built at incalculable cost to house the eternal remains of god-kings, and not one of them has ever been found to contain the king it was supposedly built for. We call them tombs. We have never actually found the bodies. We have only found the boxes, and the boxes are empty. So, if the king's chamber is a burial chamber, where is the king? And if it isn't a burial chamber, then what were these granite rooms actually built to do? Because the deeper you go into the Great Pyramid, the less it behaves like any grave anyone has ever seen. That brings us down into the stark stone chambers below. Most people picture the inside of an Egyptian tomb the way the movies show it. Walls covered floor to ceiling in painted hieroglyphs, gods and jackals and scenes from the afterlife, columns of text naming the dead and guiding their soul through the underworld. Spells, prayers, warnings, color everywhere. That is what a royal tomb of the New Kingdom looks like. The tomb of Tutankhamun, the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, they are drenched in writing and imagery, because for the ancient Egyptians, the words and pictures on the walls were not decoration. They were the machinery of resurrection. Without them, the pharaoh could not be reborn. To an Egyptian, a burial chamber with no inscriptions was not a burial chamber at all. It was a tomb that could not do its one job. Now walk into the Great Pyramid. The chambers are bare. The king's chamber, the supposed final resting place of one of the most powerful rulers who ever lived, has not a single hieroglyph on its walls. No spells, no prayers. No name of the king carved anywhere inside the room built to guarantee his immortality. The queen's chamber, deeper in, is the same. Austere, silent, empty of text. Descend the long passage beneath the entire structure, cut down through the bedrock itself, and you reach the so-called subterranean chamber, a rough, unfinished, jagged space that looks abandoned mid-excavation, with a pit dug into the floor and a blind tunnel that runs a short distance into solid rock and simply stops. No decoration, no purpose anyone can agree on, just raw stone and dead ends. The interior of the largest, most sophisticated pyramid ever built is almost completely silent. It does not name its owner. It does not spell out his journey to the afterlife. It contains virtually none of the religious apparatus that defined an Egyptian royal burial. And this is the tomb of a god king who supposedly commanded the resources to move mountains of stone with metronomic precision, but who, we're asked to believe, forgot to write his own name on the wall of his own grave. The official answer is that this style is simply earlier, more austere, that the elaborate painted tombs came later. And that's true, to a point, but it doesn't dissolve the strangeness. It sharpens it, because it forces the question the standard story keeps dodging. What if these chambers feel wrong as tombs because they were never primarily meant to be tombs? What if the king's chamber, with its 5 layers of granite beams and its mathematically exact proportions, was built to do something, to hold something, to house some function that we simply do not have a category for? We look at a granite room with a lidless empty box and we call it a grave, because a grave is the only idea we brought with us. The pyramid keeps offering us evidence that doesn't fit the idea, and we keep filing it away as an exception. And the exceptions are about to get much harder to file, because now we have to talk about how this thing was actually built, and that is where the mystery stops being about religion and starts being about the limits of what human beings, with the tools of the Bronze Age, should have been able to do at all. Consider the granite in the king's chamber again. Aswan granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth, so hard that it turns the edge of a modern steel chisel. The ancient Egyptians, according to the standard account, cut it, shaped it, and polished it, using copper tools, stone pounders, and sand. Copper is softer than granite. You cannot carve granite with copper any more than you can carve steel with a butter knife. And yet the granite beams above the king's chamber were quarried, dressed, transported 500 miles, lifted 140 feet into the air, and set into place with joints so tight you cannot slide a blade between them. Some of those beams weigh more than a fully loaded city bus. There are more than 40 of them, stacked in 5 tiers, in a chamber near the top of a mountain of masonry. How do you lift 80 tons of granite, 140 feet, with no pulleys, no iron, no steel cable, and no machinery more advanced than rope, wood, and ramps? Engineers have argued about this for 2 centuries, and there is still no agreed answer. Every proposed ramp large enough to raise the heaviest blocks would itself have required more material and labor than the pyramid. Every proposed lever system runs into the raw problem of the weight. We have theories. We do not have a demonstration. No modern team with modern understanding has ever reproduced the feat at full scale. And here is the detail that makes it worse, not better. When a British engineer named William Flinders Petrie surveyed the pyramid in the 1880s, a man who came to Egypt as a careful, skeptical scientist, determined to measure rather than fantasize, he examined the granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber and found saw marks on it. He concluded the Egyptians must have used saws over 2.5 meters long, tipped with jeweled cutting points, and drills capable of biting into granite under enormous pressure. These were the sober conclusions of a hostile witness, a man who wanted the ordinary explanation and could not make the stone give it to him. He measured what the tools had done, and then had to invent tools capable of doing it, because the copper chisels in the museum cases could not. More than a century later, we still argue about how those marks got there. The marks themselves are not in dispute. They are cut into the granite. You can run your finger along them. Then there are the artifacts. Inside and around the pyramids, investigators have found stone vessels, bowls, and vases carved from granite, diorite, and other brutally hard stones, with walls in places thinner than a few millimeters, hollowed out through narrow openings, some so symmetrical that modern researchers scanning them have found them balanced to tolerances associated with precision manufacturing. There are core samples drilled out of granite where the spiral groove left by the cutting tool suggests a drill advancing through the hardest rock far faster than copper and sand should allow. There are saw marks in basalt. There are surfaces flattened so perfectly that laser measurement shows deviations of a fraction of a millimeter across their length. These objects exist. You can hold some of them. And every one of them raises the same question the corridor raises in a different form. What did these people actually know? And what did they actually have that we have not accounted for? Now layer the mathematics on top of the engineering. The proportions of the Great Pyramid encode numbers that its builders, according to the timeline we accept, should not have possessed. Divide the perimeter of the base by twice the height, and you get a figure remarkably close to pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Look at the relationship between the height and the base, and you find a close approximation of the golden ratio, the proportion that governs growth in nature and would not be formally described until the ancient Greeks, 2,000 years later. The base is aligned to true north with an accuracy that implies a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. The whole structure sits astonishingly close to the center of the landmass of the Earth. Coincidence can explain one of these. It strains to explain the pattern. Skeptics will tell you, fairly, that if you take a big enough building and look for enough ratios, you'll find pi and phi by accident, and that is a real caution. But hold it next to everything else. The impossible lift, the copper-cut granite, the precision vessels, the bare, nameless chambers, the empty coffin. Each one, alone, has a possible mundane answer. Together they form a portrait of a structure that consistently, relentlessly does more than a tomb needs to do, and does it with a sophistication that keeps outrunning the century it was supposedly built in. Which is exactly why, when a team of physicists announced that they had found a massive hidden space inside this building using the same physics that studies exploding stars, the reaction was not curiosity, it was disbelief, and then it was something closer to fear. Here is what they did. Beginning in 2015, an international project called ScanPyramids set out to look inside the Great Pyramid without drilling a single hole. Their tool was Muography, a technique that detects muons, subatomic particles created when cosmic rays from deep space slam into the upper atmosphere and rain down on the surface of the Earth constantly, harmlessly, passing through your body by the thousands every second. Muons pass through solid rock too, but stone absorbs some of them along the way. Put a muon detector inside and beneath the pyramid, count the particles arriving from every direction, and the empty spaces show up as bright channels where more muons survive the journey. It is, in effect, an X-ray of a mountain, made with particles born in the death of distant stars. It cannot lie about empty space. Rock stops muons. Nothing does not. In 2017, the ScanPyramids team published their result in the journal Nature, and it landed like a thunderclap. Above the Grand Gallery, deep in the core of the pyramid, in a region where every existing map showed nothing but solid limestone, 3 separate detectors using 3 independent muon technologies all saw the same thing: a void. A large, empty space, at least 30 meters long, roughly the length of the Grand Gallery itself, sealed inside the masonry with no known passage leading to it, no doorway, no corridor, no mention in any record. They called it, cautiously, the Big Void. And the caution in that name did nothing to hide what it meant. There is a room-sized emptiness, possibly larger, hidden in the middle of the most studied ancient structure on Earth, and after 200 years of exploration, no one knew it was there until particles from outer space revealed it. The response from parts of the establishment was immediate and defensive. It's not a chamber, some said. It's probably just a construction gap, an empty space the builders left to relieve structural stress, or the internal void of a ramp they used to haul stone and then buried inside the finished pyramid. A byproduct, an accident of engineering. Nothing to see. Maybe. But notice what that explanation is really doing. It is taking the single largest unexplained feature ever discovered inside the Great Pyramid and insisting, before anyone has ever laid eyes on the inside of it, that it must be boring. No one has entered the Big Void. No camera has been inside it. No instrument has measured what it contains. It could be a stress relief gap. It could be a construction void. Or it could be a sealed chamber, deliberately hidden, that has never been opened in 4,500 years, which, if you are the kind of builder who reinforces one room with 40 granite beams and aligns your monument to the stars, is not a wild thing to build. We do not know. And we do not know is a very different sentence from it's nothing. And this is where the hidden corridor from the very beginning of this story comes back, because the corridor and the void are connected, and together they change the stakes entirely. The North Face corridor, confirmed by the same ScanPyramids team and revealed to the public in 2023, sits just behind the original entrance on the north side of the pyramid, above the descending passage. Like the Big Void, it was invisible from the outside, hidden inside the masonry, unknown to every explorer in history. When the team finally threaded a 6mm endoscope through a joint between the stones, they saw it directly for the first time. An unfinished corridor, about 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, with a striking gabled ceiling of great limestone beams leaning together into a peak, the same architectural signature the Egyptians used to protect the most important spaces from the weight above them. You do not build a gabled roof of massive stone beams over nothing. You build it over something you are protecting. The corridor points inward and upward, into the body of the pyramid in the direction of the Big Void. Think about what that means. The builders constructed a hidden passage, roofed it like they roofed their most important chambers, sealed it inside solid stone, and left no record of it. And it aims into the heart of the structure, toward the largest hidden emptiness ever detected inside the building. The corridor is not a random gap. It is oriented, it is protected, and it may be exactly what the word implies, a corridor, a way in, a route to somewhere the builders wanted reached, or wanted found, or wanted sealed away. The camera reached the end of the 9 meters and met a wall. Behind that wall, the muons say, the space continues. So let's ask the question this entire video has been building toward, the one the official story keeps answering before it has any right to. What is inside the Big Void, and what did the hidden corridor lead to? The honest answer is that no human being alive knows, because no human being has ever been inside it. But we are not without evidence, and the evidence points somewhere extraordinary. We know the void is large, at least the length of the Grand Gallery, one of the most significant architectural spaces in the pyramid. We know it is deliberately sealed, with no ordinary passage built to reach it. We know it sits in the structural heart of the building, in the most protected zone, exactly where the builders placed the king's chamber and lavished their heaviest granite. We know that a hidden, gable-roofed corridor, the architectural marker of a protected space, runs toward it. And we know, from everything we walked through to get here, that this is a civilization that hid its most important things behind stone, that built with a precision we still cannot fully reproduce, and that left us tombs with no bodies and chambers with no names, as if the real function of this monument was something other than the one printed on the label. Put all of it together, and the picture that emerges is staggering. The Great Pyramid may contain, sealed behind its stone for 45 centuries, an intact space that no robber ever reached, no explorer ever found, and no record ever mentioned the one part of the most examined building on Earth that is still, genuinely, closed. If the sarcophagi we've opened are empty because they were robbed, then somewhere in the untouched dark of that hidden void could lie the one thing the tomb robbers of history never got to. And if the coffins are empty because these chambers were never simple graves at all, then the void is something even stranger, the sealed heart of a machine we have spent 200 years mislabeling, waiting behind a hidden corridor for the first eyes in 4,500 years. Either way, the title is not hyperbole. Behind that corridor is the single most important unopened space in the ancient world. And we are, right now, the first generation in human history with the technology to know it's there, and the tools, potentially, to reach it a robot small enough to slip through a 6mm gap, a particle detector that turns starlight into a map of the invisible. For the first time since the last worker sealed the last stone in the reign of Khufu, the inside of the Great Pyramid is not finished revealing itself. Because here is the part that should keep you up tonight. Everything in this story is real. The hidden corridor is real. You can see the endoscope footage. The Big Void is real. It was published in Nature, confirmed by 3 independent detectors, and no serious scientist disputes that the empty space exists. The empty sarcophagus is real, and no confirmed royal body has ever been recovered from any Giza pyramid. The bare, nameless chambers are real. The 80-ton granite beams lifted 140 feet with copper and rope are real. The precision-carved stone vessels are real. The pi and the golden ratio hiding in the dimensions are real. None of this is invented. All of it is sitting inside a single building in the desert, 4,500 years old, that we walk past on postcards and file under ancient tomb, so we don't have to think too hard about what it actually is. The scientists keep scanning. The muons keep falling out of the sky, drawing their slow map of the emptiness inside the stone. The corridor still ends at a wall, and behind the wall the void still waits, sealed, dark. And by every measurement, we have not empty of meaning. We built the most precise structure in the ancient world, packed it with impossibilities, hid a passage and a chamber-sized space in its heart, and then spent 2,000 years insisting it was just a grave. It was never just a grave. The pyramid has been trying to tell us that the entire time. And now, for the first time, we finally have the eyes to look through a hidden corridor, into a hidden void, at the last great secret of the ancient world, still 4,500 years old, still sealed, still waiting exactly where the builders left it, for someone to finally open the door.